Welcome to another edition of This Fucking Guy, the show where we pick one fucking guy who's making America worse and explain why they suck. I'm Erin Ryan, host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast.
And I'm Alyssa Mastromonaco, the other host of Crooked Media's Hysteria podcast. And you're tuning into part 2 of our 3-parter on the fucking guy who has been dominating the news for the better part of the last decade.
We're talking, of course, about Donald Trump, the fail-son sex pest who was able to leverage a role on a hit reality TV show into being, briefly, the leader of the free world, and from there, metastasized into a cancer that has irretrievably corrupted the Republican Party and eaten a hole through America's gooey soul.
Colorful.
Yeah, I shouldn't write when I'm hungry. If you haven't caught part 1 of our Trump series, you might want to watch that one first.
There's just so many bizarre side quests in the life of Donald Trump.
So in the interest of keeping things on track and revisiting the fever dream that we've been having the last 9 years, we've enlisted a little help. Meet Crooked Media's Julia Claire, a writer and comedian who also, unfortunately, has an encyclopedic memory of some of the weirdest shit Donald Trump has done.
Hey, Erin. Hey, Alyssa. Thanks for having me. Do you remember when Donald Trump was obsessed with Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart's relationship for like 3 weeks in 2012?
I do remember that.
Yeah. He felt very strongly that they should break up. Important business for a then 66-year-old to be consumed by. But ultimately, it makes sense that a blood-sucking predator to young women who has been alive forever would be Team Edward.
Good point.
Last episode, we left off in the 2010s when Donald Trump, thanks to his dad's money and connections, had amassed a spectacular career of failures. He'd bankrupted multiple casinos, he'd tanked an entire professional football league, he'd lost more money than just about any other American taxpayer. But then reality TV mega producer Mark Burnett swooped in with The Apprentice, transforming Trump from a sort of tacky Manhattan business goofus to a guy vast swaths of the country saw as a competent leader. Which means now, in this trilogy, we've arrived at The Empire Strikes Back.
Unfortunately, unlike The Empire Strikes Back, this installment does not have the best soundtrack, because the music at Trump rallies that has not resulted in cease and desist letters from the artists behind them mostly sucks ass.
Unless you're into Kid Rock and Lee Greenwood.
I know I said last time that we'd start with a golden escalator ride down to a Trump Tower lobby full of Craigslist-sourced actors, but first we need to give you a little bit of context. Because you see, the start of Trump's political career was powered by the same dirty fuel that helped build his father's real estate empire and sustains Trumpism to this day.
Racism.
The very same. The scene. New York City, spring 2011. Maroon skinny jeans had us in a chokehold. The G train was still the worst train, soon to be replaced by the R train. And Donald Trump, from his gaudy perch above a Gucci store and a Starbucks, led what was then known as the birther movement.
During Barack Obama's first term as president, a conservative activist named Orly Tates tried to sue to have him disqualified from the presidency on the basis that he wasn't a natural-born citizen. She was basically laughed out of the courtroom as Obama had released his birth certificate already, and contemporaneous media reports in a Honolulu newspaper indicated that he was, in fact, born in Hawaii. And even if he hadn't been born in Hawaii, he still wouldn't have been disqualified because his mother was a citizen of the U.S. No matter where he was born, he was still considered a natural-born U.S. citizen. The whole thing was, and I cannot stress this enough, very fucking dumb.
At the time, Donald Trump was most famous for going on TV in what can best be described as businessman drag, an exaggerated performance of maleness and authority characterized by over-the-top catchphrases and distinctive hair and makeup. And despite the fact that he'd openly flirted with running for office in the past, he'd publicly mused about a political career for the same reason that Kardashians get married, for the attention. So Trump has spent March of 2011 saying he had, quote, real doubts about Obama's birthplace. He claimed that he'd sent a team of investigators to Hawaii to find the truth and offered to donate $5 million to charity if anybody found proof that Obama was born in the U.S.
In late April of that year, Obama released his so-called long-form birth certificate, and as a result, Donald Trump shut the fuck up forever.
Just kidding, if only. So days after Obama releases the long-form birth certificate, it's the Whitehouse Correspondents' Dinner 2011. Trump was there as somebody's guest, and given how much egg was on his face vis-a-vis the birther fracas, he was the big flabby butt of many jokes.
Like how Obama walked up to the podium to a Hulk Hogan song called Real American while images of his birth certificate were projected behind him. And then there were the jokes themselves.
I know that he's taken some flack lately, but no one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing? What really happened in Roswell? And where are Biggie and Tupac?
He hates sitting in a place where someone else is getting attention. And then he doesn't get to talk. Someone else is talking about him in a way that makes him look small.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is that he can't respond. You could just see him sitting there, like, doing his little furious head cock, just seething.
The next day, President Obama would announce that Osama bin Laden had been killed in a raid in Pakistan. It was, shall we say, a good weekend for the president.
And a bad weekend for Trump. His racist birther screechings were the laughingstock of the political press, and to make matters worse, the bin Laden raid stole all the attention from him.
The weekend was so bad and humiliating, the story goes, that Trump vowed to have his revenge on Obama.
But before we skip ahead to June 2015, I want to talk a bit about personal grievances, because a lot of the more WTF, where did that come from statements from the former president make more sense if you understand his litany of perceived slights. The guy remembers grudges better than he remembers Tiffany's first name.
Poor Tiffany.
Hey, I'm not making fun of Tiffany. It's not her fault that he's a shitty dad. Alyssa, let's just start with probably my favorite one.
I've always wondered about the windmills.
Yep. He brings up windmills a lot, and this isn't just him losing his marbles. It's him holding on to one of his oldest grudges. So this started in 2006 in a feud with the government of Scotland. He got in a lot of fights over there.
So many.
They built a wind farm off the coast of Aberdeen within sight of one of Trump's golf courses. Trump fought the wind farm because it fucked with the view of his golf course, I guess, and he lost. But ever since then, he's been making absurd claims about wind energy, and most people don't know his long history of being mad about those Scottish windmills. And so when he gets mad at the wind, he sounds fucking crazy.
If Hillary got in, you wouldn't have that stat, I can tell you right now. You'd be doing windmills, and if it doesn't blow, you can forget about television for that night. The wind kills all your birds killed. They got these big, ugly suckers hanging down. They're rusting and rotting. And they say the noise causes cancer. You tell me that one, okay? They're manufactured. Tremendous fumes, gases are spewing into the atmosphere. Windmills are causing whales to die in numbers never seen before. They're driving the whales, I think, a little batty. What about the thousands of birds they're killing? Try going to the bottom of a windmill someday. It's not a pretty picture.
What? People have looked into this, and they found that skyscrapers kill way more birds than windmills do.
I'm sure my dining room window kills more birds.
Most of his enemies are people or entities that either defied him or didn't act how he wanted them to, like his bizarre fixation on former Miss Universe Alyssa Machado, who committed the cardinal sin that a woman could commit: not looking and acting like Donald Trump wanted her to look and act. After Machado won the title of Miss Universe in 2005, Trump shamed her for gaining weight, once staging a photo op where Machado worked out on an elliptical as he stood next to her wearing business clothes. Okay, well, folks, we've arrived at the moment we all remember but wish we could forget: Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign.
Yes, Trump rode down that fateful golden escalator and into our nation's collective nightmares on June 16th, 2015.
He had already at this point flirted with running for office so many times that in 2013, CBS dubbed him a serial presidential campaign explorer, which we think was mainstream media speak for pathetic, thirsty bitch.
Almost immediately, the press dubbed him the anti-politician, prone to saying whatever was on his mind, his terrible, addled mind.
Trump wasn't taken particularly seriously when he first entered the race, but maybe he should have been. The signs were all there, like when you find out one of your high school classmates who was always talking about how it's all connected, man, has joined a cult. From the beginning, Trump drew large crowds of enthusiastic supporters, and around the Western world, right-wing politicians were being swept into office on a wave of anti-establishment faux populism.
Ah, yes, like when the UK voted for Brexit and Marine Le Pen was courting a shocking amount of support in France.
That's right, but this is America, so our fascism is number one.
USA! USA!
Anyway, Trump spared no time telling us exactly what his whole thing was going to be about.
The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. It's true. And these are the best and the finest. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
One or two
Good people.
This was his first campaign speech. He came in at an 11 on the crazy meter.
Hey, Erin, remember when like a month later, The Hollywood Reporter obtained a casting call email for actors to show up in Trump Tower on the day of the announcement in support of a, quote, pro-small business group that is dedicated to encouraging Donald Trump and his latest ventures? The allegedly homemade signs were actually handed out to actors as they showed up. Of course, the casting call didn't specify that it was for a campaign announcement. That's going to the back of the sizzle reel.
I'll say.
Trump was forced to sell the Miss Universe organization, which includes Miss USA and Miss Teen USA, as the comments drove away broadcasters NBC and Univision.
It was shortly thereafter that a bunch of Trump's gross behavior towards women and girls came to light, but we'll get to that in a minute.
In August 2015, the FEC released a list of filings from super PACs backing all the Republican candidates, and it appeared that Trump was the only one who did not have the backing of a super PAC, which he immediately used to pad his faux populist credentials.
And by that time, just a few months into the GOP primary, Trump had already had a comfortable lead and was lapping his closest rivals by double digits.
Which made him particularly dangerous going into the televised primary, given that television is basically a home court advantage for Trump.
At this point, the media and most Americans were still in a state of surprised confusion that Trump was doing so well, and he had very few plans for policy and less than zero public service credentials.
In fairness, the big names in the 2016 GOP primary were basically a rainbow of the party's finest beta cucks, like Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, and Ted Cruz.
Right. So Trump was basically able to humiliate each of them one by one by being like, you're slow, you're fat, you're short, your dad killed JFK.
Oh, yeah. I always forget he accused Ted Cruz's dad of killing JFK. 2015 really was a more innocent time.
Sorry, can I say something fucked up?
Always.
Okay, thank you. All of those other Republican candidates are so terrible in their own respective ways that it was initially kind of fun to see Trump openly making fun of them and calling them names, at least for a minute. Low energy Jeb, Lion Ted, Little Marco. Come on. That shit was fun when he didn't have any actual power.
Back then, Erin, I'd have said, give the man the Netflix comedy special he so desperately wants.
Oh my God, it would have been like if Hitler had gotten into art school. Okay. There's one part of this debate that I think is really illustrative of the dangerous appeal Trump had and still has to a certain kind of voter. Fox News moderator and former sane person Megyn Kelly pressed him on statements he had made about certain women, referring to them as, quote, fat pigs, slobs, disgusting animals, and telling one female contestant on Celebrity Apprentice,
You dropped to your knees.
Yes. And begged to do this.
It must be a pretty picture you dropped into your
John
knees.
and Dennis thought I should be. I'm a rope.
It almost feels Pollyanna-ish to talk about how there was a time when comments like that would be something for which even a Republican politician would, at bare minimum, have to offer a public apology, but Trump didn't even flinch. In what we know now to be his signature style, he doubled down, and in what we probably should have known was a harbinger for the horrors to come, the audience lapped it up.
Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either. This country is in big trouble. We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in trade and at the border. We lose to everybody.
You know, political correctness, I don't think, is the biggest problem in this country.
But also, look at the reaction it got. He really did tap into something that I think we all should have maybe paid more attention to.
As Trump continued to widen his lead, there remained a delusional hope that someone at the RNC would pull the emergency lever and prevent him from becoming the party nominee.
As it turns out, a lot of Republican spines turn to jello when you dangle cuts for the rich in front of their beady little eyes.
Right. There was a lot of very public grandstanding from a lot of old guard Republicans with every new revelation of Trump's depravity, assuring us that, yes, this was the last straw that would surely make them reconsider their support for him.
Erin, you said earlier we'd be getting to Trump's gross behavior towards women being made public. I'm getting the feeling we've arrived.
Ding, ding, ding.
I don't want to sound too much like a chauvinist, but when I come home and dinner's not ready, I go through the roof.
By the way, your daughter, she's beautiful. Can I say this? A piece of
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of disagreement because ultimately Ivana does exactly as I tell her to do. Right, men? Is that right? Huh?
If I were running The View, I'd fire Rosie. I mean, I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers. I'd say, Rosie, you're fired.
What does Tiffany have of yours, and what does Tiffany have of Marla's?
She's really a beautiful baby. She's got Marla's legs. We don't know whether or not she's got this part yet, but time will tell.
Although she does have a very nice figure. I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. You know.
Oh my God.
Wow.
How can you tell if your baby's legs look like Marla Maples? That baby's undernourished. Baby's legs are supposed to be chubby and have rolls. There was the fact that several Miss Teen USA beauty pageant contestants said Trump walked into their dressing room while the girls were changing, some were young as 15, and several other former Miss USA contestants who accused him of unwanted kissing, touching, and solicitation. Cool, great stuff. There were dozens of complaints from former Apprentice crew members and contestants claiming that Trump repeatedly sexualized female contestants.
One of those contestants, Summer Zervo, said that Trump sexually assaulted her during a meeting about potential employment opportunities.
By far the most serious allegation was from a Jane Doe saying Trump had raped her when she was just 13 at the home of Jeffrey Epstein.
Trump denied each and every one of these claims, threatening to sue all of his accusers and calling them liars and fame seekers.
But the most explosive piece of evidence of Trump's rampant misogyny and sexual predation was one he couldn't deny or run from. We're talking, of course, about the Access Hollywood tape. The scene. October 2016. Hillary Clinton was so far ahead in the polls that she was measuring the drapes in the Oval. Bill was practicing his first gentleman finger guns. It was a Friday afternoon, my first week at the Daily Beast, and I was getting to wrap things up and head to Brooklyn for a concert I'd been looking forward to for months. And then
I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and fuck her. She was married.
Huge news there.
No, Nancy. Yeah. No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. Then all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy.
what a gross person.
I mean, yeah, we've all heard that so many times.
He got to be president and Billy Bush got fired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All of the Republicans who had been clutching their pearls so hard clutched even harder, some claiming that this was the last straw. Trump himself limply defended what he had said as locker room talk, even though Trump had, during the campaign, already urged his supporters to attack protesters and members of the media. He had mocked a disabled reporter, called Mexicans rapists, promised to ban Muslims from the country, vowed to punish women who had abortions, openly called for Russia to spy on his opponents. For some, this was the last straw. The tape was seen by onlookers as a death knell in a cartoonish campaign run by a clown car of creeps and racists.
Speaking of racists, remember when Trump took out a full-page ad advocating for the death penalty for 5 black and brown teenage boys who were wrongfully accused of the rape and beating of a female jogger in Central Park? And how they've since been fully exonerated for the crime as the real perpetrator was caught with DNA evidence?
Julia, that was in 1989. We are way past that.
Well, we forgot to put it in the last script, Erin. And also, the past is alive.
Okay. Fair enough.
And also, to this day, Trump refuses to apologize for any of it, which means he currently believes there was nothing wrong with calling for 5 innocent boys to be executed by the state, which is a pretty bold stance for a convicted felon and a testament to the fact that we will likely never hear an apology from him for anything.
It still boggles the mind the Access Hollywood tape didn't sink him. I mean, Howard Dean squealed and there was a CNN breaking news alert confirming the death of his campaign. Michael Dukakis sat in a tank with a huge helmet and a goofy grin and went on to win only 10 states in the District of Columbia.
But there were a couple things going on in the world that would go on to tilt the election in Trump's favor. First, during that very stupid summer, behind the scenes, the Trump campaign was colluding with WikiLeaks and the Russian government to sow chaos in the U.S. election.
WikiLeaks, in cooperation with people close to Trump, obtained and released thousands of emails from the DNC which publicized the party's preference for Hillary Clinton's candidacy over Bernie Sanders, which understandably ticked a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters off. Trump was over the moon about this.
Meanwhile, Secretary Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server to send official emails was of great interest to the political media and to one James Comey, then director of the FBI, despite the fact that nobody ever found that Clinton was sending top secret information over an unsecured server and that the FBI had concluded its investigation into the matter. In early October 2016, the FBI found more emails in connection with an investigation into the slimy behavior of former New York Congressman Anthony Weiner, who had been sending sexually explicit pictures and messages to a 15-year-old girl, and as a result roped in his then-wife, Huma Abedin, who was at the time Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. Phew, what a sentence.
That sentence made me feel like I have light sensitivity and just stared at a strobe light.
Then on October 28th, literally days before the election, Comey tells Congress that the investigation has been reopened, even though the Justice Department told him not to. And we all know what happens next.
Fucking James Comey.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You know, some of the most stressful times in my life when I've been dealing with health concerns or dealing with work stuff and not really having a way to talk about it, I kind of feel like I'm, not really being my authentic self as I move through the day, kind of numbly. And I could definitely have benefited from talking to somebody to help me balance what was happening internally with what I was projecting externally. One of the most important benefits of therapy, in my opinion, is recognizing patterns and being able to understand when I'm doing something that I don't want to do and be able to stop it and ask myself why I'm doing it. And that actually improved my quality of life a lot. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/HysteriaPod today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HysteriaPod.
Hey, remember when right after Trump won the election in 2016, he agreed to settle 3 lawsuits against Trump University for $25 million? Because it turned out that the university, which later was ordered to change its name because it legally could not call itself a university, was a giant scam that used hard-selling tactics to dupe people out of up to $35,000 for courses on how to succeed in real estate, and how some of the materials that the Trump Institute used in class were directly plagiarized from real business school textbooks. Trump University was shut down in 2011 after scamming thousands of people out of money, making 0 millionaires.
Thank you, Julia. And now on to the presidency that really put the con in constitutional crisis.
The fuckery began before Trump even took office with the formation of the Inaugural Committee, which, from where I'm sitting, looks a lot like an elaborate money and influence laundering operation. Trump's Inaugural Committee was up to some incredibly shady business. They raised about $107 million, much of which was from dark money sources, and spent all of it. Journalists looking into the way the funds were used found that a lot of that money had gone to pay Trump's D.C. hotels ridiculously expensive rates to hold events and house VIPs there, which meant that a lot of the documented use of funds was just to put money directly in the pockets of the Trump family business. Even after extensive investigations, tens of millions of dollars are still unaccounted for. Well, Erin, the committee was eventually taken to court over the obvious grift and ordered to pay $750,000 in a settlement. They only paid part of it and admitted to no wrongdoing.
Hey, remember when in December of 2016, Donald Trump tried to dissolve his charity, the Trump Foundation, but the Attorney General of New York wouldn't let him because it was under investigation for basically being a fake charity? The Trump Foundation was founded as a way for Trump to charitably donate the proceeds from The Art of the Deal, but that's not what happened. He did donate the proceeds of the book and very little else. And it turned out that the charity had no physical office and his children were on the board. Investigators also found that the charity was yet another scheme, collecting money from mostly outside sources and then giving money to other organizations that were turning around and giving the money right back to the Trumps by holding events at Trump properties.
Julia, I'm starting to get worried about you, but do thank you for this information. My favorite bit about the Trump's fake charitable acts is the one where the Washington Post's David Fahrenthold found that in January 2016, Trump held an alleged fundraiser for veterans and rather than distributing the money to any charitable organizations, just kept all the money.
Oh my God.
That's not how charity works. Trump released a report on all the charitable giving that he claims he was doing, and it turns out that of the $102 million he'd claimed to have given to charity between 2009 and 2015, $90 million was conservation easements on Trump properties, and 2,900 items of the list were for free rounds of golf. So we haven't even gotten to the actual presidency yet, and Trump's already the grift that keeps on grifting. During his presidency, the aforementioned Trump Hotel DC was a clearinghouse for people who wanted to publicly curry favor with Trump by spending money at one of his properties. From T-Mobile executives hoping for favorable treatment for their merger deal, to politicians hoping for a chance to cozy up to Agent Orange himself. It was, for a shining moment, the greatest place in America to violate the emoluments clause. That is, until business slowed down to a trickle during the COVID-19 pandemic, eventually forcing the sale of the hotel to new owners.
Good night, sweet little prince. Speaking of sweet little princes, let's talk a bit about Trump's promise to hire, quote, only the best people to work for his White House. I know a lot of our collective memories of the Trump administration have been lost in the cacophonous chaos of those years, but to understand why Trump is one of the worst fucking guys in American history, we should also dissect what a shitty fucking boss he was. In the interest of time, let's tick through some of the Trump administration's most noteworthy comings and goings. Play them out, bone thugs. Oh, wait, I'm getting word. We can only play 6 seconds of this song before we get in trouble, so just imagine that it's playing throughout the list of dearly departed. Mike Flynn, National Security Advisor, lied to the FBI about secret conversations he'd had with the Russian ambassador, pled guilty to crimes, but was eventually pardoned by Trump. Now he's a full-time QAnon weirdo.
James Comey, FBI director, refused to lick Trump's boots with appropriate amounts of suction. Fired on May 9th, 2017, went on to write a book and occasionally tweet.
Sean Spicer, White House press secretary, left to pursue his true dream of, dancing, I guess?
Oh my God. I mean, live your best life, Sean. Okay, resume sad music.
Anthony Scaramucci, White House Communications Director, fired July 31st, 2017, so soon after being hired for the job that short periods of time are now measured by units known as Scaramucci's. Currently trying his luck at the podcast game. Good luck, Tony. There's gold in them there hills.
Steve Bannon, chief strategist, resigned August 18th, 2017. Jared Kushner didn't like him. Currently in prison.
Rob Porter, White House Chief Staff Secretary, resigned February 7th, 2018. Lied about abusing 2 ex-wives. Turns out he'd never even had security clearance in the first place. Where is he now? Hopefully getting kicked in the balls.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the UN, resigned October 2018. It all just became too much. Still voting for Trump. Sad.
Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, fired March 2018 allegedly from the toilet after calling President Trump a moron. Scott Pruitt, EPA Administrator, resigned July 2018 after spending his entire tenure feasting on corruptly gotten gains, tried to use his position to get his wife a Chick-fil-A franchise.
Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, Attorney General. Donald Trump had his then Chief of Staff, John Kelly, fire him in November 2018 for being a pussy, I guess. Sometimes I think Trump just got bored and threw a simp into the volcano for fun.
Alyssa, we are only halfway through the administration.
Let's just do a quick list of the others.
Even the people who did work out were basically a Matryoshka doll of corruption and ineptitude. His daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner famously leveraged their positions to enrich themselves before fucking off to Florida and having nothing more to do with Trump's political career.
And dear viewers, in case you need a basis of comparison, the average first-year turnover rate of a non-Trump presidential administration is 8%. In the Trump administration, it was 35%. Want to guess Trump's total turnover by the end of his term?
I don't know, 50%?
92%.
Wow, he's about as faithful to his employees as he is to his wives.
Donald Trump's presidency was, yes, an absolute shit show, a chaos factory, but all of the policy decisions had a cogent through line: naked cruelty. His very first week in office in January of 2017, Trump wasted no time issuing one of his most inhumane executive orders, the Muslim ban.
The executive order barred entry to the U.S. for all people from 7 Muslim-majority countries. The ban was temporarily blocked by a federal court, the first of many, many battles Trump would have with federal judges.
Trump has a long history of promoting Islamophobic conspiracy theories on social media, including fake stories of Muslims celebrating on 9/11, and he even claimed that he saw it on television. Trump proposed surveilling mosques and endorsed the idea of requiring American Muslims to register themselves in a special database. Just regular fascism stuff.
He also staffed his administration to the brim with virulent Islamophobes like Steve Bannon, Michael Flynn, and Seb Gorka. Michael Flynn, who was the national security advisor for 23 whole days, referred to Islam as a vicious cancer inside the body of 1.7 billion people that needed to be excised. Classic normal guy thing to say.
There were massive protests against Trump's Muslim ban across the United States and dozens of legal challenges. University students from the 7 Muslim-majority nations targeted were either stuck in the United States, unable to return home, or stuck in their country of origin, unable to return to school.
In June 2018, the Supreme Court upheld an amended version of the ban, blocking most immigrants and travelers from Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen, plus North Korea and Venezuela, just to throw in some variety there, I guess. I know this may feel like it's firmly in the past. President Joe Biden rescinded the Muslim ban when he entered office, but that doesn't mean it's over.
That's right. On the campaign trail this year, Trump promised to revive the ban.
We do not need a jihad in the United States of America. We do not need our once great cities to become hotbeds of terrorism. And on day one of the Trump presidency, I'm restoring the travel ban, suspending refugee admissions, and keeping terrorists the hell out of our country, like I had it before.
It was also right at the beginning of the term that Trump cleaned house at the Department of Homeland Security in order to enforce his, quote, zero-tolerance policies at the U.S.-Mexico border. And a truly unconscionable plan cooked up by Trump's senior advisor and receding hairline eugenicist creep Stephen Miller and ICE Director Thomas Homan, border agents began separating families, specifically parents from children, to deter undocumented immigrants from entering the country.
DHS and ICE agents at the border also began denying entry to asylum seekers, which is, super illegal.
On August 11th, 2017, hundreds of white nationalists descended on Charlottesville, Virginia for the Unite the Right rally, carrying tiki torches, wearing polo shirts and MAGA hats, and spewing white supremacist slogans like blood and soil.
One of the neo-Nazis in attendance drove a car into a crowd of counter-protesters, injuring 19 people and killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer.
We all remember Trump's compassionate presidential reaction to the tragedy in which he denounced anti-Semitism and white supremacy once and for all.
I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as neo, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue.
In the eyes of Donald Trump, a statue of a dead guy is more important than the life of a living woman. Not even a year into his administration, it was clear that Trump's violent rhetoric against Muslims and immigrants and his not-so-subtle wink at white nationalists was having real-world consequences.
According to a 2020 FBI report, hate crimes surged nearly 20% under the Trump administration.
From Trump's reaction to Charlottesville, it's clear why people would believe hate crimes were now basically permissible.
Hey, remember when Trump stared directly into an eclipse?
God. All right. Thank you for that moment of levity, Julia. That was helpful.
As much as we would love to marinate in Trump's depravity, in the interest of time, here are a few more of the administration's all-time low blows rapid fire.
In 2018, he disbanded the Special National Security Council unit tasked with dealing with pandemics.
Good thing we didn't end up needing that one. Famously, no pandemics after 2018.
In 2019, Trump recognized the Golan Heights as Israeli territory, even though the settlements were considered illegal under international law.
Again, no lasting consequences to speak of there. Great stuff.
Great stuff. Oh, don't worry. We're getting to COVID-19, and apologies in advance for the 2020 flashbacks we're about to inflict on all of you. Let's go through some of the highlights.
Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. You treat this like a flu. The risk to the American people remains very low. You don't want to see panic because there's no reason to be panicked about it. There's 15 people out of billions of people, 15 people. Yeah. They're getting better, and soon they're all going to be better. Hopefully it's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle, it will disappear. Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that, right? Coronavirus. And this is their new hoax. So healthy people, if you're healthy, you will probably go through a process and you'll be fine. You take a solid flu vaccine, you don't think that would have an impact or much of an impact on corona? No. Probably not.
President, is it safe or appropriate to be holding rallies during a public health crisis like this?
I think it's very safe, yeah. I think it's very safe. And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
Wow. I say this a lot, but the Republican Party really did get their science exams handed back to them face down.
Face down.
That's right. 1 million people, 1 million Americans died.
I haven't been in a science class for like a couple of decades, and I'm going to say I know the difference between a coronavirus and a flu virus.
Right.
They're different.
One of the reasons that Trump is dangerous is that when it comes to national crises, he's aggressively bad at handling any pressure, from neglecting key pandemic readiness to spreading what can only be described as quixotic misinformation to mocking public health guidance to carelessly exposing his supporters to super spreading events. It's hard to imagine how a president could bumble and fumble a national crisis more than Donald Trump. He couldn't have done it worse if he'd tried.
Hey, remember when Donald Trump sort of maybe killed Herman Cain? Cain, a former pizza magnate turned professional Republican gadfly, attended one of Trump's many summer 2020 rallies where attendees just raw-dogged the air without masks on. And 9 days later, Cain tested positive for COVID-19. Later that summer, after a drawn-out battle with the virus, he died. I feel like there might be a lesson in there if we just think hard enough.
I do remember that. Summer 2020 is when the MAGA movement officially became a death cult. And look, we're not grave dancing here, just pointing out that many of Trump's most devoted supporters found themselves falling victim of COVID-19 during the height of the pandemic, in part due to the fact that they believed it was somehow part of the liberal agenda to follow public health directions.
Hey, remember when...
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. Hey, remember when Donald Trump caught COVID-19? It was early October. Trump had been flapping his big wet mouth all over the country all summer, hosting super spreader events from coast to coast. And finally, days after the debate with then Vice President Joe Biden and several weeks of making fun of Biden for wearing a mask in public, he tested positive for the disease. He was infected so severely that he had to be hospitalized for a few days and given an antiviral treatment not available to the general public. I feel like there might be a lesson in there if we think hard enough.
Boy, do I remember that. It was one of the best days on Twitter of all time. And now, as Donald Trump's favorite song goes, the end is near. We're deep into fall 2020. All of us have collectively lost our minds. I watched all of Homeland. Trump is behind in the polls, and it looks like he's going to lose.
But with all the chaos and misinformation his campaign has spent the summer sowing, it's not clear how the election's going to go.
One thing we do know is that it will take days to count up all the absentee ballots from around the country. And we also know that Trump had refused to commit in interviews and debates to accepting election results if he lost, which should have portended what was about to happen next.
And that's where we leave you at the end of this fucking guy. Trump 2, the Trumpire strikes back with a cliffhanger.
Well, not really. I mean, we already know what happens.
Erin, let's pretend to build drama.
All right, but before we go, Alyssa, how many weasels does Chapter 2 of Trump's life, as determined by us, earn him?
Scale of 1 to 5?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a 3 this week.
What?
I'm going to go with a 3 this week because we sort of know what's going to happen. The origin story is what made him this bad. This is like the meat in the sandwich right now. So I'm just going to go with a 3.
I'm going to go ahead and say the meat is why I get the sandwich, so I'm going to say it's a 5. He inflicted immeasurable damage on the country. He appointed 3 Supreme Court justices. He did all of this damage during his first term. And it's going to be like a generation before the stink is gone, even if he loses. We'll pick up in a couple of weeks before Election Day with the 2020 election and beyond. There will be thrills. There will be chills. There will be 39-minute DJ sets while Kristi Noem stands there awkwardly wondering why she'd hitched her wagon to Trump's falling star.
Until then, if you like this fucking guy, please like and subscribe below. And if you want to make sure this fucking guy doesn't get reelected, please go to votesaveamerica.com/2024 and get involved.
Hey guys, speaking of rapists,
racist.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, easy.
Potato with this guy, am I right?